Welcome to LSR Live. Here we are again on a Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I know we've got folks from all over the world. We'll do some shout outs a little later. We want to hear where you're watching from and also put your questions in the chat because we've got a wealth of knowledge coming for you tonight on the topic of natural remedies. And by that, I mean very wide, broad discussion from wound care to cancer and diabetes to the cold and flu to hormone imbalances to everything that you want natural remedies for. So, thanks to our sponsor, Revita Sinus, Throat, and Hands. And I brought for you one that's in the LSR store that you've never seen before. It's the Revita Guard Kids flavor. This one I love, and most of our users love it. This is the Revita Guard Ultra with the super sweet and pepperminty flavor with the stevia and the iodine in there. This is very good for the throat for when you're getting assaulted with all kinds of things during this cold and flu season. But for the kids, sometimes they're like, ooh, that's too minty, mom. So get the Revita Guard Kids. Get the hand sanitizer there at the LSR store as well. Several scents of that. Scott, don't say flavors. It's a scent because you don't put the hand sanitizer in your mouth. But when you spray that, it's not the alcohol-based kind. Check out the sinus one for protecting the sinuses as well from everything that's thrown at us this cold and flu season. LSR Store, thank you for being our sponsor. We're going to bring up shortly our guest tonight, who is Walt Cross, who's got a wealth of experience and knowledge for decades in helping people with helping people with their ailments, with their problems, the natural way. We want to see natural remedies, and we're also just going to see what is the difference between conventional allopathic medicine versus the approach that I know this audience has come to know and love through Barbara O'Neill and other teachers that teach on the natural approach. So I want to invite everybody to be a part of this, and our guest Walt Cross as our natural remedies extraordinaire tonight. And Walt, can I just start you off with that big picture question of a philosophical approach to human physiology and disease treatment and prevention, allopathic versus natural? What's your take on that, and what drew you to this as your profession?
Well, my background was in allopathic healthcare in administration for 20 years. And the allopathic model, many times we're looking at addressing signs and symptoms. We're looking at masking and managing, and we just didn't get to root cause. And it's a system by which a lot of times it just keeps coming back. But I found through lifestyle health, we can look at the root cause and we can nip it in the bud many times. Yes, there's times we're not able to, but a lot of times we're able to correct that problem, and then you don't have that disease anymore, like diabetes.
You know what? Take us right there to diabetes. We had a guest on a couple weeks ago, and we're all just having our collective minds blown that this disease is totally a paper tiger, totally reversible. We're talking about mainly type 2 diabetes here. So, what do you do to help people with type 2 diabetes, and how have you seen that be effective in people you've been working with?
Well, I know when I worked in regular healthcare, we only uh, we treated it through pharmaceuticals. And I remember when I left corporate and I told corporate I was going to an area that we could reverse type 2 diabetes. And they looked at me and they said, Walt, you are crazy. You're going to ruin your reputation in healthcare. And then I said, you can even improve type 1 diabetes. And they looked at me straight in the eye and they said, Walt, you are stupid. It cannot happen. Well, yes, it can't happen at that time back in regular healthcare because we weren't getting to the root cause. But if you want to find like type 2 is easier to reverse than toenail fungus. It really is. And so you've got to look at what's the cause. And there's three major causes I find with type 2. One is, well, let me back up. You've got trillions of cells, and around your cells, you have insulin receptors. And the insulin receptors, what happens is when the cell needs glucose, insulin receptor opens by insulin and allows the glucose into the cell, and everybody's happy. But what happens is when this insulin receptor quits working, and if you have type 2 diabetes, you have insulin resistance, And so that receptor is resistant to the insulin. It just doesn't work right. And then you have to take medicine that can try to assist that insulin receptor. So what happens is when we find the cause and you fix the cause, diabetes can go away. What are three major causes? One is ideal body weight. If you're outside of ideal body weight, the receptor can at times not work. Number two is if there's too much fat in the blood. Number three is if there's too much inflammation. So what do? One, we shrink the cell and we get to ideal body weight. Number two, we look at the fat in the blood, and it can be fat from oil. Now, I live in the South. We fry everything: maters, taters, ice cream, pickles, cheese. And just the other day, I found out you can fry Coca-Cola and Mountain Dew. Crazy, Scott. Isn't that crazy? So we fry everything. If we don't fry it, we pour oil in something. My grandma used to cook green beans, and she would put more than a cup of vegetable oil, and it was okay because it was vegetable oil, she thought, and more than a cup into the green beans, and it looked like an oil slick on top. And it tasted tremendous to my little Southern tongue, but it's not healthy. The other thing that has fat in it that we consume in our diet is dairy, and the other one is meat. And Duke University found if you stop using fat in your diet, like oil, stop using dairy, stop using meat, this is cool. The insulin receptor, the body cleans that insulin receptor out, which is clogged up. Number three is inflammation. Now, inflammation can be number one thing Harvard says is processed foods. It can be sleep deprivation. It can be stress. A number of things can cause inflammation. And so you want to address that inflammation. So what do we do? So I use a program by Dr. Walter Kempner, and it's the rice diet that Kempner did. So in the morning, we'll do 3 fruits and a cup of brown rice. For noon, we do a nice big salad. But again, remember, you can't have oil. And so no fats there. So when there's no oil, no dressing, no meat, no cheese. But we squeeze some lemon juice or maybe some low salt salsa. And then a brown rice. And that's for breakfast, and that's the noon meal. But nothing for supper. See, that's the way you reverse type 2 diabetes, is you don't do supper. You want to break fast, which is breakfast to supper. You want to break fast from the noon meal to breakfast. That's how you do it. I remember when I went to the clinic 24 years ago, and I went in and I knew we had good outcome indicators, but I went to the doctors. I said, listen, you're not doing a morning snack. You're not doing an afternoon snack. You're not doing supper. You're not doing an HS snack. We've got to do it. And they said, why? They decided to play with me. And I said, because it's a standard of practice. Okay. How many diabetics did you reverse where you came from? I walked out of the room because we never did. We never saw a care plan that said reversing diabetes. It was diabetic management through pharmaceuticals. And so I went to my office and I called this little lady down in Sill, Alabama, called Dr. Agatha Thrash. And I said, Dr. Agatha, I know the outcomes are here, but they're not serving snacks. They're not serving supper to diabetics. Is this a problem? You know what she did, Scott? She started laughing. She said, Walt, that is how you reverse diabetes. And so I felt comfortable then because I had a lot of respect for Dr. Agatha. And it's true. And so number 2 is you got to have exercise. And Kempner found we need to walk 4 times a day. Loma Linda found a 20-minute power walk lowers the blood sugar more than 1 shot of insulin. Isn't that cool? A 20-minute power walk lowers the blood sugar more than 1 shot of insulin. Kempner at Duke found if we exercise 4 times a day, it's much more effective. Drink adequate water, go to bed by 9 o'clock. Diabetes is reversed. It's amazing. And so how long do you stay on the program? Until you're at ideal body weight. You have a blood sugar, a A1C of 5.6 or less. You have a fasting blood sugar of 99 or less, and there's no medication.
That's amazing. By the way, when you're doing those walks for blood sugar control, it's especially helpful to do that after a meal, right? And hopefully
Absolutely.
The meal is the kind of meal you're talking about, whole plant foods. I brought up the map of obesity rates in various states, and those states you were mentioning, that are eating a lot of that refined fat, and it's going to put on the pounds. So I love your program. It's basically the exact same thing our listeners were hearing 2 weeks ago, from Louis Burtis. And so it's just what works. We're just reading off the same script called reality. Let's shift to just cold and flu. What do you do for folks who are just encountering, pick something up in the airport and got sick? I mean, do you rush out and buy some of that, sugar fructose drink, that vitamin C stuff, the marketed at Walgreens? What's the Walt Cross program for? I said program. I hope you noticed that, for fending off, and then if you do get cold and flu, knocking it out.
Well, Scott, I think the key is not after you've been at the airport. I think it's before you were at the airport. Did you get your sleep ahead of time? I can remember when I worked in regular healthcare, I traveled a lot and I taught a lot there in regular healthcare. And I can remember I'd get up and I'd stop at a gas station. I'd get my Dr. Pepper. I'd get my Snickers bar. And that right there will wipe out your immune system. Only one white cell out of 14 white cells is working for 4 hours. And then I'd get to the place we're having the meetings, and they would have danishes and whatever. And then I'd walk up to old George, and George had just rubbed his nose, and he'd put his hand out and shake my hand, and then I'd pick that Danish up and eat off of it. Boom. My immune system was blown because I drank my Dr. Pepper. I'd eat my Snickers bar. I didn't get my sleep last night. I'm stressed out, and now I just ate some Danishes. I think pre is so important. Those basic 8 laws of health that y'all talk all the time about, that nutrition, the exercise, the water, the sunshine, temperance, making the right decisions, fresh air, diaphragmatic breathing. Scott, people breathe like chihuahuas. They need to breathe diaphragmatic breathing, and they need to have where the stomach goes in and out like a little baby. Yes, fresh air is important. Both of those. Get your sleep and trust in God, which I believe is the most important part of that combination. But I think that being proactive prevents you from even having to worry about it, but then just making the right decisions. Don't place yourself in a situation that is more vulnerable. If someone's over there coughing and snorting, whatever, just don't go walk by them. Hand washing is important. I think that's important. If you're going to proactively go into a situation, you can beef yourself up with vitamin C, with oil of oregano, with I like Alimed, which is tremendous. It's really strong garlic. You can proactively go into it. Echinacea, golden seal, all those guys proactively, colloidal silver, so that your body's built up because you're going to go on that airplane situation or whatever. But if you do start to catch something, then we need to be, we can learn a lot about dogs and cows and whatever in nature. And if you have a sick dog, does that dog go eat? No, it sits there and it doesn't eat that much. And so, no, we don't need to eat a lot. If we're feeling sick, cut back on the food consumption. Make sure you got plenty of water. Get your rest. And yes, you can still also do things like, your golden seal and your echinacea and your chlorine, all those items to build the immune system.
Excellent. Excellent. By the way, you named something there that on these platforms I always avoid saying, because one of the platforms said this very substance is, subject of misinformation and medical policy and this and that. It's the main thing in these, and I never say what it is. It sounded like colloid, something like that. And you spilled the beans on it. So now I can tell folks that's actually what's in. Everybody who went to the LSR store knows what's in the Revitiguard throat spray and what's in our hand sanitizer. It's one of the most powerful substances we have at our disposal. And I love your approach here. Don't wait till you get sick. When I'm going to the airport literally tomorrow. I'm flying. I'm going to do a seminar. I do seminars on media. So I'm going to a church. I'm going to do a day-long seminar. I am coming armed with all that stuff. I'm going to be taking the oregano oil ahead of time. The elderberry. You didn't mention elderberry. You give that one thumbs up?
That's a great one.
Good. Wow, we even got fireworks out of the elderberry there. Fantastic. That was an effect I didn't expect.
Scott, did you know that researchers in Sydney, Australia found that elderberry prevents virus pathogens from sticking to the wall in the lungs?
Awesome. How about pine oil, pine essential oil in a diffuser in your hotel room? Is that something you recommend too? Is there healing properties in the fir and the pine?
Absolutely. Let me tell you a quick story. I was
Okay.
teaching a class, maybe 24 years ago, and a little old lady raises her hand. And I said, "Yes, ma'am." And listen to the old folks. They got a lot of information. And I said, "Yes, ma'am." She says, "Let me tell you how to use the pine sap, the pine oil, whatever." She says, "When I was a little girl in 1918, during the influenza, my daddy was a nurse, and we went from house to house in California. And daddy would take care of the folks with the influenza, the Spanish flu. And that got my attention. Serious stuff here now. And these two children would go into the house with the father, who's a nurse, house after house after house, day after day, and they didn't get sick. And she said, when we got home at night, daddy'd take a pine knot, he'd hold it over a fire, and pine sap would drop out into the cup of water, and daddy would drink out it, and we drink out it. All three of us would drink that glass of water. And I said, well, how much water, how many drops? She says, I don't know. I was a little kid, but it worked.
That's amazing. And I can tell you, I you want it in the lungs too. So you
Oh,
put it in a
absolutely.
pot, you put some of that essential oil in a pot. You got to be careful you waft it, it can sting. You can get too much, but don't take the pine essential oil in internally, right? But you can use rosemary. That's not as harsh and that's got the pinene in it, right? So we've used that in our product development, but I love everything you said and I've done it. And I'll be drinking my water. I'm not drinking the sugar drinks. I'm sleeping enough. Even when I travel, I try to get my itinerary so I can get a good night of sleep. And
Yes.
listen, brother, I've done over 400 seminar events where I'm traveling and speaking over the last 10 years. I have gotten sick one time,
Whoa.
and that was COVID.
Hmm.
And it was Delta. I had a real good case of that. But then earlier this year, I got myself sick. And you know why? Because I didn't do everything I normally do.
True.
I had stayed up late. I was kind of cramming for a new seminar I was doing, and I was going to get ready for the recording. And I didn't do the hot cold showers.
Oh,
Can
yeah.
you
Yeah.
talk about that?
So hot and cold, what happens with the hot and cold? You've got vasodilation, vasal constriction. You're increasing vascular flow, but also you're increasing the immune system in this process.
Excellent. And
It
so, do you
increases
do
the
that?
white cell count.
Yeah, do you do that regularly, or do you only do that if you're fighting something or if somebody's got something around? I mean, I just end every shower with cold. Is that
That's
smart?
the way. I mean, you know, when you finish the shower cold, one, you're going to close cells. The other one's you're going to build white cell count.
Excellent. And by the way, if listeners are like, are you joking? There is no way I'm turning my shower to all cold and ending that and being freezing. It works the opposite way, my friends. You will be warm. Just try it. I know you got to take my word for it. Just try it once. You won't die. Turn it to all the way cold. After you've gotten yourself nice and warm in a shower, turn it to all cold for 30 seconds and then turn the shower off. Don't go back to hot. Get out of the shower, towel yourself off, and you'll notice you are warmer than you normally are after a shower. Trust me, try it. Can you give me an affirmation on that, Walt?
Well, it does several things. One, it wakes you up. It also lets the family know you're finished with the shower because you're hollering. But absolutely, it does. It
It's
works.
true. You're dancing around in there. All right. Let's change over to some heart disease topics. Talk about cholesterol. I'll ask you about some others, but cholesterol. What can you do to give yourself a good reading on that the natural way?
My cholesterol was 288. I was still working in regular healthcare. The guys at work said, "Walt, you got to go on a statin." And folks in healthcare, a lot of those guys, if they pay attention, they know the problems. And so I did not want to go on a statin. They told me I was genetically predisposed. My daddy had problems. My granddaddy had problems. And I decided to kind of like if you have hypertension, you go on a no added salt diet. I decided I go on a no added cholesterol diet. Well, my cholesterol went from 288 to 104. And what it proved to me was it was not genetic predisposition. I was Southern predisposed. And so I was eating what Southern folks ate because that's what my Southern daddy ate. And that's what my Southern granddaddy and all their kinfolk ate. And so what do you do for cholesterol? I think the best thing to do for cholesterol is just don't eat cholesterol. And I found several things that do cause cholesterol to increase, and that is eating cholesterol and what has cholesterol in it. And that's anything with a mother. So if it has dairy, if it has meat, it's got cholesterol in it. I don't care if what kind of meat it is, it has cholesterol in it. And the most is brains. Brains has the most. Shrimp has a lot, but any kind, fish, chicken, it all has cholesterol. But also, we know that Dr. William Davis, a cardiologist, found that the American wheat which has 42 chromosomes, instead of the European wheat has 14 chromosomes. Through superhybridization, our wheat actually raises the LDL. The American wheat raises the LDL. And so by eating a lot of wheat, that can increase your LDL, the bad cholesterol. Another thing that we found in our research was that cashews actually lower the HDL. And when we stop serving our patients cashews, because a lot of times in lifestyle, you do a lot of cashew stuff because you're instead of using the dairy, and so you're doing cashew butter, cashew cheese, cashew gravy, cashew, whatever, loaf, whatever. A lot of cashews can lower the HDL. And cashews in general, a little bit of time, that's fine. So as if you stop the dairy, stop the meat, choose something other than the American wheat, and then be careful with your cashews. I find the cholesterol goes and drops very rapidly with people. A lot of fiber helps with cholesterol. Also, there's bergamot's good. It will lower it. Garlic lowers it, and so that's what we use.
Excellent, excellent. When it comes to the nuts, the cashews and the other nuts, you don't need a lot, right? In order to get the
No.
cognitive and heart health benefits, it's like a handful, right? Like a palmful.
Yes.
The whole day.
Yes. We find that for cardiac health, if we would do just a little serving, it doesn't take a lot. In your best nuts, you want a PS ratio below 2.0, it's things like walnuts, almonds, pecans. Those are your good nuts.
Great, great. Now, while we're on the heart health topic, talk to us about triglycerides.
So triglycerides, there's several things that can cause triglycerides: stress, sugar, oil, and meat. And when we cut back on that, and I like using that same diet out of Duke University, where we use that. Dr. Kempner's diet is an excellent program. I know John McDougall said it was the best cardiac diet in the world. We use it when I go to Africa and I teach in Africa. We have significant improvements when we use it over there. And again, that's for breakfast is 3 servings of fruit, 1 cup of brown rice. For the noon meal is a nice big old salad, but no dressing, no oil, no dressing. No cheese, no meat, and another big cup of brown rice. And from a cardiac standpoint, the brown rice has bran, like wheat bran. Well, brown rice has bran. And so the brown rice bran actually helps the cardiac function. And if you have to do supper, then I would repeat breakfast.
Yeah, especially that fruit, right? A light supper. And what I'm hearing from a lot of your dietary perspective is, again, a repetition from what I'm hearing all over the place from specialists, and that is the food containing the fiber. It's like the one word, the easy man's description, the simple-minded man's description for the healthiest possible diet is like maximize your fiber and your colors and your variety of fruits, vegetables, nuts, grains, legumes, and especially good quality grains like you're talking about. Would that be the same thing with congestive heart failure, where we're on the heart topic? Is it mainly this dietary change that you're discussing?
So for CHF, what we're looking at is the same diet, the same exercise aspect, getting that water, getting the bed on time, but also you want to take a look at hawthorn berry. You want to look at CoQ10. Usually with CHF, you have issues in the lungs with fluid. You have issues with edema in the legs. And the best thing I found there is dandelion leaf and L-carnosine.
Okay. Well, you've given us a number. I'm wondering if people want to write those down, because you just threw out a bunch there. Could you say them one more time for our listeners?
Absolutely. So hawthorn berry, remember hawthorn berry has a half-life of 4 hours. So you want to use that 4 times a day. CoQ10, you want to do that 4 times a day. The dandelion leaf, you want to do that 4 times a day. And then the R-carnitine just once.
Excellent. Excellent. And while we're thinking about cholesterol, triglycerides, and congestive heart failure, I want to go back to the cholesterol, because the next question I'm going to ask you, I've heard, and I want your opinion on this, I've heard that this not only helps with upset stomach, and everybody's got to have this in their cupboard for when mommy, my tummy feels bad, or you ate something and what that just didn't settle in your stomach right. Yeah, Jeremy's already on the ball there with the QR code. Yeah, charcoal. That is hugely important to have in your cupboard. And does it also help with cholesterol?
It
Or is
does.
that
You
it does?
absolutely, and I've seen it happen, and you can be pretty aggressive with it. And I don't know if we can be prescriptive in how much we talk here, but yes, activated charcoal you can do as much as 4 times a day. There's two things you got to watch out for charcoal. Number one, if you have problems with constipation, if you're taking a lot of charcoal, drink plenty of water because it can cause constipation. But even more important is if you're taking a prescription medication, do
Oh
not
yeah.
take it within 2 hours either side. And I tell young girls that come in, if you're on birth control, do not put it within 2 hours of your birth control pill or it will not work tonight. Or whether it's you're on naloxone for tachycardia or whatever, it doesn't react with it. It just soaks it up. And that's why we used to use it in the ER for patients that overdosed or on the ambulances because of patients overdose. I remember a nurse called me one time. She said, Walt, I gave a patient way too much morphine. What do? I read the MAR wrong. I said protocol, charcoal, boom, took care of it. Fortunately, it was is by mouth. It wasn't IV. And there was no problem.
What other benefits charcoal externally? Bee stings. What else do you use charcoal for?
Externally, I use it for wounds. Let's say you have an infected wound. I use it for, bee stings. My daughter had a brown recluse bite, a bad brown recluse bite. And this is before I knew this, Scott. And because I was trained in regular healthcare and I didn't know this stuff yet. And I took her to my neighbor, an old retired doc. And I mean, this is a bad looking wound. It's red, it's hot, it's very necrotic. And I take her to this old retired doc, and he says to his wife, he says, give me a charcoal poultice. And so she got him a charcoal poultice, put it on there. He says, come back tomorrow night. We'll look at it. I said, what is it, doctor? And he says, don't worry about it. Just come back tomorrow night, because he knew if I knew, I'd take her straight to the ER to get it addressed, and they'd cut it out back then. And so I trusted him, came back the next night. I went and picked her up, took her over to him. It was no longer red, no longer hot, no longer hard, looked very good. And I said, okay, what was it? He said, oh, it's just a brown recluse bite. Do you know there is no scarring? She has no scar. We've used it on bee stings, and it's amazing externally. Internally, as you said, it is the best thing for food poisoning. If you have a stomach virus, it's just a tremendous tool that is out there.
You mentioned wound care. I wanted to ask you more about that. Charcoal is one thing you want to start with, obviously, to disinfect the wound. Maybe you also use a silver wound gel type of thing, or maybe I'm not supposed to talk about that. But what other? I mean, maybe the listener isn't like the hardcore prepper, but what kind of things do we all want to have as practical preparedness measures as far as wound care goes? You mentioned the charcoal. What else?
So when you have wound care, number one is nutrition. You've got to have excellent nutrition. Number two is you've got, depends on what kind of wound care. Is it a pressure wound? If it's a pressure wound, then you have to reduce that capillary pressure by whatever's causing pressure to the area. Or if it's just a big wound. I had a guy that his doctor sent me a pic. It literally, Scott, looked like a shark had bit off the bottom of his foot. He was a diabetic. He had osteomyelitis, and he had neuropathy, and half his foot was gone, literally gone, and they were going to amputate it. And the first thing is I juiced him. I literally love juicing folks in order to get super saturation. It's like Hyperal or TPN, where you're going that nutrition is going straight into the blood. It's in the blood within 15 to 20 minutes, quality nutrition. And then because he had osteomyelitis, that's infection of the bone, I gave him Alimed. And then for his foot, we did hydrotherapy. And people say, oh, Walt, you can't do hot and cold. That's true. You can't do hot and cold, but you can do warm and cool. Don't do over 100. Don't do over 70-degree water. So you have 2 buckets of water. You put the foot in warm water for 3 minutes for that 100-degree water. Then we went into the cool water, the 70-degree water, for 1 minute, back and forth 7 times. Then we went and sprayed Alimed on there. Alimed, it takes 24 cloves of garlic to make one drop of this stuff. It's amazing, super, super powerful. And because of the osteomyelitis, any infection, then I make a salve, a wound salve. And in the wound salve, I'll put, this sounds familiar, Christmas time coming. It's got frankincense, myrrh, golden seal. Golden seal is great for infections. You can put pine sap, as we talked about the pine. You can put bee propolis and aloe vera. I love aloe vera for wound care. And then again, because he had an infected wound, I put a charcoal poultice on it, and we did that twice a day. And in 30 days, Scott, that foot had totally filled out, and we were ready for a skin graft. And the osteomyelitis was gone, and his diabetes, we had his diabetes controlled because we were addressing that nutrition aspect.
That's amazing. I'm sure folks are going to want to archive this and, timestamp that right there, because you may find yourself in a situation where you're like, what do I do? Or take notes, put it on, in your medicine cabinet with the notes of what to do. And, oh, you know what? Jeremy put up the wild yam cream. That reminds me of a question I had coming up. It's the next question. Women with hormone imbalances, infertility, bleeding issues. I mean, we can take those one at a time, but just, start with the hormones. How do you help women with challenges in their hormone disruptions?
Women, when I first came back to East Tennessee 24 years ago, probably the top two things I dealt with was stress and women's hormones. And we see a lot of female hormone issues here, and a lot can be because of stress. But I think, again, nutrition is so important for female hormones, male hormones too, but female hormones, you've got to have good nutrition. And what's the best nutrition? It's what you always talk about. It's that whole food, plant-based diet with variety. That is the best nutrition I find for females. And if I want to really supercharge it, I'll use juicing, and it's amazing. But we use wild yam cream, and wild yam cream stabilizes progesterone. And when you stabilize progesterone, you stabilize estrogen and you stabilize testosterone. And it works super, super well. And I've been using wild yam cream now for 24 years. The other is, many times stress blows the adrenals. When the adrenals are blown, we have issues with hormones. And so I use something called nettle. Nettle is the most nutritious herb in North America. Scott, I remember I had this lady come in one time. They own this huge dude ranch where they drive cattle and whatever. And her husband comes in with cowboy boots and spurs and cowboy hat. And the wife came in, and she's dressed like a cowgirl. And she came in one day and she said, "Walt, I need some nettle." And I said, "I think I'm out." And I said, "Let me check." So I looked and I said, "No, I'm plumb out." And she says, "You better get that stuff in fast." She says, "If you don't, we're going to make national news." I said, "What are you talking about?" She says, "As many women as you and Mary Lou have on on the nettle for women's hormones, we're going to make national news because we ain't going to be doing too good." And so nettles are tremendous. And then the other thing I use is flaxseed. I'll do flaxseed twice a day, and flaxseed has some great phytoestrogens in it, and it works quite well.
Excellent. And you ground flaxseed? You grind it in a coffee grinder? Or?
Yes, good question. You do not want to buy ground flaxseed. You want to grind it yourself because you got to eat it within 15 minutes of grinding because it oxidizes very rapidly.
Yes, excellent. And by the way, thank you, Jeremy, for reminding that. Walt's got an excellent website, excellent web store with a lot of the resources he's talking about. And so use that QR code to check out Walt Cross's resources. Also, Jeremy, could you bring up the LSR one again? Because he just mentioned the flaxseed, which we've got. I want folks to always have flaxseed. That is such a critical ingredient to your diet. It's one of the most important. It's got the omega-3 fatty acids,
Right.
And it's useful for women's hormone balancing. That's amazing. And before we get, I want to continue on the women thing, but you mentioned 2 times juicing for nutrition, for nutrition, for women's health, and also even for the man who had the wound. Tell us what else juicing is good for. I mean, nutrition, but what specifically is it helping with? And then also tell us your preferred, recipe, your juicing formula that gives people the best nutrition punch.
Well, when I look at working with people, I look at kind of like restoring a vehicle. Let's say, Scott, you're going down the road. It's Sunday afternoon, you and the wife and the kids, and you're going down the road, and an old country road, and you see an old 57 Chevy sitting out there in the field, and you back up and you drive up to the house, and you say, ma'am, what are you doing with that old car out there? And she said, honey, if you want it, you can have it. And you say, oh, okay. And you call up your buddy with the rollback, and he comes and he gets it. That 1957 Chevy is going to have to be restored. And the first process, I mean, you've got to take the grinder and the sandpaper and the Bondo and the Tiger Paw and the primer and the paint and redo the tires, and you put new tires on it and put new upholstery on it and rebuild the engine. That's the restoring program. And so I find that the same is true when I work with people. You've got to restore them. And then once that car is finished, you don't take a grinder to it anymore. You're in the maintenance phase where you're just rotating the tires and putting oil in it and gas in it and that kind of thing. And then I have a different program for just maintenance. So one of the best things I have found where I get the best results, whether it's cancer, whether it's autoimmune diseases, best thing I found for autoimmune diseases is, and then for say, like, hormones, or for, these really where I really want to hit it hard, like using the hyperalimentation, is the juicing. And I don't have a favorite juice, because when I'm eating the maintenance program, I don't just eat the same plate of food all the time. Mary Lou fixes me a variety of food. And so your juices need to be a variety of juices. Now, this is another key of juicing. You don't want to drink the juice. And that sounds...
Chew it. You chew
it. You're exactly right. You got to chew it, because just as you chew your food, it loads it with saliva, amylase, protease, and lipase. And so you have three separate parts of digestion. If you drink the juice, you miss a third of your digestion. And so when it sits there, you don't want just sitting there. It needs to be loaded with the saliva. To load it with saliva, you got to chew it, and chew it for, say, 10 chews, just like if I'm drinking this water here. Chew it for about 10 times. It's loading that food, liquid food, with amylase, protease, lipase. So when it goes and sits in that first part of the stomach, it starts breaking down.
Now, you don't chew the water, though. You're just doing that as an example, right?
That is correct.
Okay, just making sure. We're like, oh boy, do I have to incorporate a new health practice and chew my water? But yeah, I actually chew the juice. We do that, and we go more with the vegetable than the fruit. And
yes.
I like putting a little lemon in it.
Yeah, ginger.
Oh man, that's so good. Because then if you're putting greens in it, the lemon helps to cut that flavor and just really make it nice, and the ginger as well, very tasty.
Yeah. Well, so, Scott, be careful though.
Okay.
I had this lady call me one time, and she says, "Why are you trying to kill me and my husband?" I said, "Pardon me?" She says, "Why are you trying to kill me and my husband?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "You told us to juice, and we're juiced, and we're peeing and pooping blood." And I said, "Ma'am, did you put any beets in that juice?" "Yes." "How much did you put?" She says, "I put 2 beets in each one." I said, "Ma'am, you're peeing and pooping beet juice. So be careful. Beets are great, but just don't load it too much."
I thought you were going to say don't put too much ginger in there. That can get spicy. I mean, all you need is a tiny little sliver of the ginger. But oh yeah, we use the beets. Man, that's so good for the heart, isn't it?
It is.
Next, let's get back to the women's. You know what? Yeah. Infertility that is a big growing issue.
Yes.
My wife struggled with this years ago. God bless us with children 13 years ago. But before that, there were some women's issues with hormone imbalance and stuff. How do you help out women with infertility?
I think a lot of times women infertility can be, psychological. They're stressed, but also I believe it can be nutritional. And I find when the ladies will juice, and yes, you can use the wild yam and the nettle and that kind of thing. But the biggest key I find is just getting the lady calmed down, getting her to exercise, getting her to go to bed on time, and juicing. Juicing is phenomenal. Now, Scott, you and I believe 110%, the biggest part of this is trusting God. And as we work with folks, it is not just do the juice, do whatever. The component that makes the juice work, because juice don't do it. It is God. God has to, he blesses that. We got to do our part, and then he blesses that. And I think it's also important as we're working with people with whatever health issue of saying, it's God's body. It's not ours. Christ bought it. And God, how do you want us to address this? And I think praying ahead of time and say, okay, God, what do you want me to do? Walt said this, God said this, whatever. It's your body. What do you want me to do? And I think that's very big. But yes, we find juicing a very big component in fertility.
I love your perspective, Walt, spiritually on that. This body is God's property, and
Right.
it's the temple for the living God. And I know
Yes.
people joining us are from all religious backgrounds and cultures and faiths, and everybody's welcome here. And one thing that we have in common is a recognition that this is a gift. And so everything you're teaching is about how to keep up our body's health the natural way, not having to go the route of the allopathic medicine, which in acute situations, you need an ambulance because you got in a car accident. We're
Absolutely.
thankful, very thankful for those ER docs and stuff. So it's not meant to criticize, but what you're sharing has a whole lot of wealth of how about even with, can you talk to us about even cancer?
So when we look at cancer, first of all, as we look at cancer, there's a number of things that you can do, and so I share with people a list of items, and I just ask them to pray and ask God which one of them to do. But Scott, did you know that there's 100% guarantee to heal cancer?
Talk to us.
I find if you do four things: accept Jesus as your Savior every day, if you become really good friends with him, spend time with him, know him, don't know of him. If you've done something wrong, ask somebody for forgiveness and ask God for forgiveness, and just don't do it again. Turn away from it. And number four, read the Bible and do what it says. If it says do it, do it. If it says don't do it, don't do it. And I really believe that's important, because in that book, it says that if we do those four things, God will give us healing. It may not be right now, but when Christ comes, there will be 100% healing. And I believe that's super, super important. That gives us hope in a world today that's losing hope. But yes, there's some things we can do.
Pause
Again,
right there. Well,
yes.
I want you to give some natural remedies on cancer, but I want that what you just said to sink in with the gravity of what it is. And I hold in my hands the word of God. I want anybody listening to this who's wondering about this faith, that faith, what am I to believe? Is this, some religious people with some agenda? I want you to just study the word of God for yourself. Don't take anybody's word for
Amen.
it, not a preacher, not another human being, only God's word for it. And if you send me an email, I want to personally send you a link to a Bible study where you can look at these things for yourself, evaluate them, pray about them. Maybe you already are a Christian or you believe in God and you want to learn more. Please email me, because we're here always to talk about physical health. But the most important thing to us and anybody who thinks eternally about things is our spiritual health. And that helps our physical health, doesn't it?
Amen.
So my email address is just my first and last name at gmail.com. I want to just invite anybody to send me an email and say, hey, could you please send me the Bible study link? Just scottritzema at gmail.com. And I'd be delighted to dialogue with you over email. Just send you the link and you watch it and study and move along and see where the Lord takes you on that. But Walt, I interrupted you. You wanted to give us some practical tips on the cancer front.
Absolutely. And thank you there, because I believe that's the most important. Um, one is look at your vitamin D level. It's not how much you take, because I had a lady come in one time. She's Caucasian. She does landscaping. She takes 5,000 IUs a day, and her blood level was 12. And so, and the lab says 30 to 100 is normal now. But you have neurologists that are saying just for psychological function or brain function, you need at least 60. But if you want to go to immune function, you need 80 to 100. So that vitamin D level is very important. Yes, magnesium makes if your magnesium's low, it can affect your vitamin D, your K2. There's a number of things that does affect vitamin D, but vitamin D is important for the immune function. Another one is melatonin. This is a new one that we're really learning on, is melatonin. And there's been over 4,000 published papers on this. And we're finding that melatonin is amazing in addressing cancer with tremendous outcomes. And they're doing like 180 milligrams an hour of sleep. Or if it's metastasized, they're doing 60 to 120 milligrams 4 times a day. And one of the problems that people have is they grab this at night and they can't sleep. So they grab this here and boom, it's got blue light, and the brain thinks that's sunshine because sunlight has blue in it, so that turns off their melatonin, or they may have to get up to go to the bathroom and the light is white and only red light does. Now, this is cool, Scott. It's amazing. And I'll clarify here, but the only light that doesn't turn off the melatonin, other than this other one, is red light. So blue, green, whatever turns off your melatonin, or significant turns it off. So you can have a little red light for your go to the bathroom, or a little flashlight that's red, come back in bed, and you didn't mess with your melatonin. But this is so cool. Sunlight turns off the melatonin. But did you know that full moonlight, even with a full moon, does not turn off your melatonin?
I think we got a creator God. That's beautiful.
That's so cool. It's sunlight that's reflected, but it doesn't turn off your melatonin. That's a question I have for God when I get there, because the researchers have no idea how that happens.
The greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. We use the red night lights, by the way, in our kids' bedrooms and in the bathroom. We're on board.
Absolutely. Another item is a mini trampoline. A mini trampoline will increase the white count 300% when you bounce on it for 5 minutes. So I have people bounce on it every waking hour for 5 minutes. That keeps that white count up there. Then there's teas and herbs. I'll use like Asiac tea, Padiarco, burdock root, chaparral. Now don't start with chaparral. Chaparral, it's super powerful, but it's nasty. And so you won't do another tea if you start off with that one. But I really like those herbs. They're great. You want a tea that purifies the blood. You want to build the immune system. You want it to fight cancer. And those teas would do that. Then let's see, what else might I have? Far infrared light. Far infrared is very good for cancer. They use it in Asia. There's for years we used mid infrared light and near infrared light. But there's far infrared light, and far infrared light is outside of our eye spectrum. Insects can see it, kind of like dogs can hear things we can't hear. But far infrared increases perfusion, and it attacks then the cancer much, much more effectively. And so I like far infrared. Another one is a fever treatment, and fever treatments folks know of doing in a bathtub. And Loma Linda Medical School said that it would increase white count 7-fold. Well, I did not believe that. And so I had my nurses draw labs for a good bit of time on patients that we did the fever treatments on. And what happened is, sure enough, at 5 hours, it peaked at 7-fold. And so you do that fever treatment, then put them into bed for 2 hours afterward to rest. But you can also do a fever treatment in a sauna. You want one where the head sits out and you can keep the head cold, but you can still hit that 7-fold. And Dr. Harold Cherney at Eden Valley found it did not come back to normal for 3 days. And so the fever treatment is a great tool to increase the immune system. Walking is important. There can be poultices that folks use for cancer. External poultices. There can be charcoal poultices, a castor oil pack, or herbal poultices. You can actually use the herbs which you're using. It might be whether it's the poke. You've heard of poke tea before, or poke poultices. Be careful on poke tea. Know what you're doing. You got to do that right. But you can use all those different kinds of poultices on that affected area, and that can be beneficial. Now I'm going to share one that you're going to think is plumb crazy, Scott. Mary Lou had breast cancer about 18 years ago. And she has a personality like she's a ever-ready bunny. I mean, she's up, she's gone, and you can't stop her until she falls over tired. And so it's hard to get her to have compliance. And we're talking that that tumor was almost as big as an egg. And finally, I hog-tied her enough. I sent her to some friends down in Venezuela. We got it down much less smaller than a pea. We're doing great. They send her back, and boom, she's wide open again, and we're back up to almost that size of an egg. So I had a friend who's a physician at the time. He's gone back to Germany. He came into the office, and I said, Sam, anything I'm missing? And he goes, sting her. I said, what? He goes, sting her. I said, okay, what do I do? He said, so what you do, he said, you can feel that mass, palpate it, yes. He says, go distal 1 inch, sting her 3 to 5 times a day, and leave the stinger in for 30 minutes, pull it out and put B-propolis on it, and do that for 14 days. That's exactly what we did, and it started shrinking and totally went away. It's been gone now for over 17 years. So that's amazing, isn't it? So what happened is the immune system came to that area every day to address the bee stings, and guess what was in the middle of that area? The cancer. And we just super saturated that part of the body with the immune system to deal with the stings, but it also attacked the cancer, and it worked. Now, again, I believe God blessed. So those are some of the things that we do for cancer. There's other things, but those are big ones we do.
What do you say, Walt? We go to Q&A.
Great.
Jeremy, throw some questions at us. We got Mitch, and he's from New Jersey. A little shout out there. How you doing there, Mitch? And South Carolina, Dinah, welcome. Fellow Southerner, neighbor to Walt. Christina from Massachusetts, thanks for joining us. And Alyssa from Phoenix. Thanks for being with us, Alyssa. Oscar from New York, New York, a place so nice I named it twice. Awesome, brother. And Eunice watching from Zambia. Lusaka, my wife was born in Zimbabwe. Your next door neighbor there. That's special. I wonder how I can prevent swelling of my feet. I don't have any diabetes or any known sickness. What do you say, Walt?
There's several things. You can try doing hot and cold fomentations. You can try doing the dandelion leaf, but you want to find out what is the root cause. And you know how these new cars are, Scott, and not like the cars when I was a kid. My daddy taught me to work and rebuild engines and stuff when I was a boy, and you could actually climb in almost to the engine compartment back then. And today you can't even stick hardly everything in there, and they got to put the battery under it somewhere else because there's no room for it. And so if your car's not running right, you take it to the mechanic, and he puts it on a machine, and he does diagnostics, and it says your number one plug's not working. That mechanic does not need to change my plug. I know how to change plugs, and so I can do it. But sometimes I just need that diagnostics. So it is good to go to a doctor. He understands, assessing the patient. He understands what's going on. Get that diagnosis. Find out what it is. Then you can come back and take a look at it and see if that's something that you might be able to do natural. But that diagnosis can be very, very helpful. And I would encourage a diagnosis on why are those feet swelling, and then come back. And you don't want to just mask and manage with the hot and cold or with the dandelion leaf, because you're just going to have to keep doing it. Let's find out what the cause is and then get rid of the cause.
Great answer. Claudia, listening from Costa Rica. Welcome, Claudia. And Frida from Arizona. Thank you for being with us tonight. Demore from Japan. Love it. Other side of the world. Man, what an awesome listening audience we have. This is Oscar. He's telling Claudia he lived in Costa Rica for 5 years. You have a beautiful country, Claudia. I've been there. Virginia, some beautiful country in Virginia as well. And thanks for joining us, Anne. Claudia asks, this is funny. You said diabetes is easier to treat than toenail fungus. I wanted to ask you, Walt, how do you treat the toenail fungus? And Claudia has asked it.
Claudia, that's a tough one. And it's a very good question, Claudia. Number one, Dr. Harold Cherney found that it can be a deficiency in lactobacillus, which is a probiotic. And I know one of the courses I took in school in nutrition did talk about if lactobacillus is off, that it can affect toenail fungus. So get you a really good broad spectrum probiotic at least 50 strains, and and that can be very beneficial. And 50 billion, or at least 10 strains, but I use 60 strains. Sometimes I'll use 100 strains, but at least say 10, 12 strains, and then at least 50 billion. You want that lactobacillus, that can help. The other is what I use is, let's say use tea tree in the morning, and then use, say, some olive oregano at night, or vice versa. Olive oregano, be careful, it gets a little hot. You may have to put something around the edge, but you do want it to get in, around. And then as that nail grows, you want to keep cutting that. One of the problems with nail fungus is it takes a while. It can take 6 to 12 months for it to work. And it's got to be, Scott, contiguous.
Yeah.
Just like those books behind you, they're contiguous. There's not a book pulled out. It's not, and it's every single one is right there. It's got to be every day. And people just give up on it. And you got to stick with it for that 6 to 12 months.
Yep, absolutely. And Allie D, thanks for mentioning the tea tree oil. I was going to ask Walt that, because that's what my wife uses a lot for things like that with our children. My wife's also from Canada, by the way. So thanks for joining us from Alberta and from Louisiana. Another Southerner, Christine,
Yes.
Thanks for being with us. And Melissa, how to reverse deep vein thrombosis or pulmonary embolism?
That's a tough one. You have to be careful there. Because you don't want to throw it. And so water's very important. Water is your best blood thinner. But you've got to be very careful with those, because you don't want to throw it and then have a pulmonary embolism. You don't want to have a stroke. You don't want to have a heart attack. And so your diet is very important. You want to have a diet that, when I took nutrition classes from Cornell, Dr. T. Colin Campbell taught us the best way to address something like that is a diet that is whole food, plant-based, with variety, and not just plant-based. Because did you know that Fruit Loops are plant-based? Or even, did you know that Oreos are plant-based?
French fries.
Yeah, it's got to be whole food, plant-based, but again, very important. And Harvard talks about this a lot. It's got to be whole food. And Dr. Campbell and also Dr. Esselstyn at Cleveland Clinic found that whole food, plant-based diet is very good to help slowly start to address this issue. And the diet is very important. And yes, there's things like nattokinase, there's things like garlic, there's things like Concord grape juice. But also be careful, as you know, you want to be careful not to do, massages and things like that. Be careful of those legs. But that's what I understand. You want to be careful, and that diet is so important there.
Yeah. Any more questions coming up, Jeremy? We got a good bunch of questions. That one we just handled. By the way, you studied under Campbell. Did I hear that right?
Yeah,
That's
I had classes. Campbell was great. You want me to tell you this is cool. You want me to tell you
us the Campbell story.
Yeah, I'll tell you a Campbell story. So Campbell grew up in he was born up north, but as a young boy came to Southwest Virginia. Lived on a dairy farm, beef cattle, and grew up there. And then, got to Cornell. He's over the department there. And he had a personal hypothesis that we needed more dairy, we needed more meat. And so he starts into this study called the China study, the most comprehensive nutrition study ever done. He also brought in some really good, book number keepers. And I forgot what that's called. But anyway, so he found out it wasn't what his hypothesis was. And the more they did it, the more he found out, no, he was wrong. So what does he do? I mean, does he play with the numbers? You took statistics. I took statistics. Play with the numbers. But here's what's cool. Here's what he told us. He could hear in his mind his daddy telling him, when he was a little boy back on that little farm in Virginia, Colin, never lie. This is what he told us in class. Colin, never lie. And
That's
that
beautiful.
there is what then did it. I'm sorry, y'all. And what happened was he told the story. He told the truth. And he then, we now have the China study because of that. Because what his daddy told him when he was a little bitty boy, Colin, never lie.
That's a beautiful story. Ray asks, is coconut oil good for inflammation?
Ray, that's a tough one for me, because we were so brainwashed that coconut oil was bad for you, it's hard for me to say yes, but I have to say yes because proof's in the pudding. Back 25 years ago, we started really looking at coconut oil. It's a medium chain, and we find that it actually can benefit. Alzheimer's and other issues can benefit with coconut oil.
Excellent. Alzheimer's is a inflammation-related condition?
Yes.
Yeah, gotcha. Seeker of truth. Walt, I remember hearing your wife has COPD or some kind of lung condition in one of your videos. How do you manage it? Have you seen an improvement in her condition?
Her lung issue is because of when she was a young girl, she had leukemia. For a year and a half, she was on medications. That caused her heart to go into heart failure 4 years ago. She had an ejection fraction of 10-15, and we're bringing that back up. But it also caused problems with her lungs. And what I find with her is if I can get her to follow the rest component. She's a very work hard person, and if I can get her to follow that, she does well. And that's the same for all of us. We've got to follow those 8 laws of health. And when we break just one of them, it can cause problems. And it's hard for us to expect change if we don't change them.
Yeah, you got that right. Georgia, no, we got a lot of Southerns represented today.
That's a good thing. They can
Welcome.
understand me.
Yeah. Yes. If folks wondered what he meant, we said oil. We call that in the North oil. I'm sure you picked it up eventually, but Northeast Florida, boy, yeah, praying for safety to all of those just south of you, down across Tampa, Sarasota, Bradenton area. That's coming hard. I don't eat after dark. 2 20-minute power walks times 4. Linda's doing what you say. Yes. What are you eating? I missed it. Okay, she wants you to go back to the brown rice and your diabetes reversal and your heart disease. We don't call it a treatment. We're not treating, diagnosing, or curing anything. Of course, there's the obligatory disclaimer. But could you go over that for Linda again?
Absolutely, Linda. We also find that very good for renal failure, also for losing weight. It's a tremendous program that Dr. Kempner, he was a MD, also a PhD, and I think it was biochemistry, a tremendous physician. And what it is for breakfast is 3 servings of fruit. A serving is each apple, orange, pear. If you have diabetes, let's say a banana causes your blood sugar to go crazy, or grapes causes your blood sugar to go crazy. Just wait a little while till you get to those guys until we get this thing reversed, and then we can start even going with those guys. But so 3 servings of fruit, that's each, or little stuff like strawberries, blueberries, raspberries, a half a cup, and then 1 cup of brown rice. For the noon meal is a nice big old vegetable salad, cucumbers, broccoli, cauliflower, that kind of thing. And then just don't put any dressing or oil or cheese or meat on there. And you can put some lemon juice, as they did at Cornell. Sometimes you got to negotiate with people, especially men. And so putting some nice salsa on there, it doesn't have a lot of sodium on there. And then if you do supper, just repeat breakfast if you need to. Or sometimes I tell folks, I find best if you don't do supper, but or just do a juice. Or if you say, Walt, I don't have a juicer, do a V8 juice, low sodium V8 juice.
Yeah, that's great. I don't eat supper either. I'm with you on that. Choose Wisely says, how to cure. Now, I don't know what that is. Walt, that one's above my head. You're going to have to bail me out.
I haven't found a good one for that one yet. Yes.
All right. Well, stay tuned. We'll work on it. Please, please, please. I've been researching for days about I think we just answered that one.
We did that one.
Yeah, good. Thanks. Linda, Jesus healed the sick to perfect health in every cell. Amen. That's a beautiful Bible truth. Cold water, deep breathing. What do you have to say about that?
Cold water, deep breathing. I'm not familiar with that.
Well, those maybe are 2 separate things. People are doing these ice baths, getting into 40-degree water or whatever, and then also deep breathing as a separate exercise. 4-7-9 breathing or whatever. You can talk about those too.
Okay, so cold water. If you finish your showers with cold water, And it's not good to drink cold water. That's kind of a little difficult on your stomach. Your stomach has to stop digestion if you're doing it with meals, or even at non-meal times. It's a little hard on the stomach to take cold water. It takes a lot of energy to warm it up. Room temperature water's a whole lot better. And deep breathing, absolutely. You want that. If you ever, let's say you played a trumpet. I played a trumpet years ago. If you want to hit that good high C, you've got to have diaphragmatic breathing. Or if you're a soprano and you want to hit that real good high note, you've got to have that good diaphragmatic breathing. And I remember we had a voice teacher. He would lay you down on the floor. He'd stick a book on your stomach and say, go back to the room and learn how to breathe where that book goes up and down.
Yep, that's it. And you get the proper amount of oxygen that way. So
Absolutely.
you're not deprived of oxygen to the brain and to every cell.
And also you're getting rid of the waste. So one, you're getting more oxygen in, the other is you're getting rid of the waste more effectively.
When you talk about waste, I think a lot of people miss out on the fact that what comes out of your lungs is waste. And so if we're breathing our own waste, that's not healthy, is it?
No,
I mean, there are contexts where you need to do that, I guess. But what helps with migraines?
Migraines can be a number of issues. You want to find root cause. One of the treatments I found that works. Let me tell you a story. Can I tell you a story?
Please.
So we were doing a class for kids from elementary school up to 12th grade down in Collegedale, Tennessee at McDonald Road Church. And so it started on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Thursday morning, this lady comes in, and we're teaching these kids hydrotherapy, herbs, and different things. This lady comes in. She says, I need to tell you something about what happened yesterday. And I thought she was upset. She's my little kindergartner. I took her home, and she said I identified that I was having a terrible migraine. And she takes me into the kitchen, sets me down in the chair. She goes and gets two buckets, one of hot water, one with ice water, 2 washcloths, and she sits down and she prays that God will bless this treatment. She then sets my feet down in the hot water. She takes these 2 washcloths, puts one on my forehead, one on my back, and she keeps changing that out. And she says, my migraine went away. And it works. It works tremendously. Now, not that you can carry a chair around with you all the time. And so you want to try to figure out what the cause is. And the cause of migraines can be a variety of things. It can be because you have constipation. It can be because you're dehydrated. It can be because you need a neck alignment. I know someone that they get migraines a lot, and when they do, they go to the chiropractor. It gets migraines gone for weeks. It can be because your glasses. It could be that you need a new prescription for your glasses. It can be sinus issue. It's a lot of different things. Again, you want to get to that root cause to try to figure out what it is. And sometimes a physician can help you out more. Maybe an integrated physician can do that. Not someone just says, let me give you a pill. But you want to find out what your root cause is. You can't haul a chair around with you all the time. Yes, there's things like butterbur. Butterbur's great for migraines. You can put some peppermint up here. That can help with migraines. Lavender, but especially peppermint and lavender can help with it. Don't let it drip in your eyes. That's essential oil. But you want to find that root cause.
I solved migraines 20 years ago by just getting off of processed foods, caffeine, sugar, just anything refined, processed, and caffeinated beverages and sugar, and they disappeared, and I never had them for literally 20 years to this year. It's 2004, and my wife and I went and got ourselves healthy. She's new to all this and is thankful for the work that we're doing. So thanks. Welcome to Living Springs. We're glad to have you. Tony says, best herb supplement for HBP.
So, again, I don't want to mask and manage. If you're wanting the best herbs, you're looking at high blood pressure. I take that's what he's talking about is hawthorn berry. But you want to get to root cause. What's the cause? Number one cause of high blood pressure is stress. Stress raises cortisol, lowers potassium. Number two is dehydration. Dehydration affects blood pressure in many ways. The blood is thicker, it's stickier, brain doesn't work as well, you're more prone to stress. Your conductivity goes up, so the electricity in the body. You don't urinate as much. There's a number of reasons that dehydration can cause it. Ideal body weight can cause high blood pressure. Sleep deprivation. The American Heart Association, just June of last year, 2 years ago of 22, found that an eighth cause of cardiovascular disease is getting less than 7 hours of sleep 2 days a week, and they found that can cause hypertension. Just 2 days a week, less than 7 hours of sleep, now can be a major cause of hypertension. Kidney function. And kidneys are the switches that regulate blood pressure. And so if you have renal issues, and that's another reason dehydration is, it affects the renal function. It can be too much sodium. And I don't find as much issues with like Celtic salt and Himalayan salt as I do the little girl with the umbrella. She's the one that will kill you. Then, do you have clogged arteries, atherosclerosis? If you want to get a pressure on your hose more, put a smaller end on the end. That's going to drive up the pressure. If you have hardening of the arteries, arteriosclerosis, and the vessels don't go like this, they get stiff, then your internal pressure is going to be higher when that heart beats. And so that's going to drive up your blood pressure. The other is just cardiac issues.
Excellent. Very comprehensive answer. What about charcoal for parasites?
I've never used charcoal for parasites, and it may work. I like black walnut and wormwood. It works extremely well. And again, it may work. I'm just unaware of it.
Great. Got any tips for detoxing heavy metals, aluminum in particular?
I don't know aluminum in particular, but I know that for heavy metals, the best thing I found is cilantro and chlorella. You can also do let's say you get a hot shower. Then you get in a sauna for 18 minutes, and then you get in a hot shower and in with cold. Then get back into the sauna for 12 minutes, get back into a hot shower, in with cold, get back into the sauna for 8 minutes, get back into the shower, and then in with cold. And that vasodilation, vasoconstriction, you can actually get rid and sweat out issues with some toxicities there. And we've seen heavy metals also reduce in that process.
Excellent. Where do we buy all the pine sap? The Alimed, the garlic. I don't know. Jeremy, put any of those up if those are in the LSR store. Do you carry those ones, Walt, in your store? Okay, there you go. So Jeremy, put up Walt's store again, and or the QR code for his website. And I've got to get that Alimed. I didn't know about that one. That was
it's phenomenal. Let me tell you, well, maybe I can't hear. We have folks that come in with MRSA. It blows the doors off of any of the medication that we ever used. We send it to physicians from Australia to Africa. My son had Lyme disease, my youngest son, and it was for years he dealt with it. And finally, I found research on Alimed dealing with Lyme's. He's now been 13 and a half years, no Lyme disease.
Awesome.
But it's phenomenal. The Allison is antibacterial, antiviral, antifungal, antiparasitic, and antimicrobial. And so it's an OTC, over the counter, that you don't have to have a prescription for, that knocks bacterial viruses. Just is phenomenal.
Walt, what do you suggest for somebody with neck pain, with titanium rods in the neck? What can you mention to help?
That's a tough one. That one there, you've got an anatomical issue here that is not fixable. But I have good news. You want some good news? We can get that fixed down the road. But we don't have to live. You don't have to deal with that forever. But there's a product I use. There's several things: wild lettuce, Jamaican dogwood, California poppy. Those three herbs are phenomenal. And I add skullcap to that. It's a great nervine to add to that. And I make a tea out of it and drink 1 cup every waking 2 hours. And it works quite well. You take a quart of water, bring it to a boil, turn it off, make it an infusion, put a cup of the wild lettuce or one of the others, or a combination, and make a cup of the herb, and make an infusion, let it sit there for at least 30 minutes overnight. And then you just drink 1 cup every waking 2 hours. If it works well, go to 3, just to least dosing. There's something called Curemin, which is a tremendous tool you may have in your store by Terry Naturally. And it's very, very effective on pain. If it's more of a inflammation aspect, they have CureMed, and CureMed, you'd have to take like 500 capsules of turmeric to make it equal.
Wow. And what you just described helps pain across the board, right? Not just the neck pain of our friend
Absolutely.
Pam. Okay, good, good.
Absolutely. My dad had
So
had multiple back surgeries. He was on a morphine pump, and I got him on the Curman, and it worked better than any of the meds.
excellent. That's a curcumin product, right?
It is curcumin.
Um, Choco wonders how they can get in touch with you.
Okay, go back to. Do I need to say it here? Or?
You can shout out your contact info or
Yeah.
your website or whatever. How can people get in touch with you? I'd imagine this isn't the only person that's going to want to follow up with you.
You can go to themustardseed.us, themustardseed.us. You can give us a call, 423-623-4091, and be patient. It's been kind of crazy lately. We're still in this issue of flooding. I'm the fire chief in the area that got hit really hard in our county. And so I'm kind of been pulled back and forth and working with that during the day. So I'm not always here, but you can give us a call or you can contact us on our website.
Well, I want to thank you on behalf of humanity for serving in that capacity, in addition to helping people with their health, because there are so many needs right now and emergencies happening, and people with good hearts, with a godly impulse coming through to serve and help. I respect that and appreciate that, and to all our first responders, those who do it for a living, and those people who are giving their vacation time to go with their church and help out. Just love you guys, and in fact, somebody from my team from my Belt of Truth Ministries, which is what I also do in addition to hosting LSR Live, was literally just down there tromping through the mud, and it's a labor of love for sure. So yep, I think we covered that one, Jeremy. If you want to bring up any more questions. And oh yeah, kiwi fruit every day. That's great. That's great. We love fruit. We at LSR love our fruit, don't we? Mari says amen, probably to those comments just about those who are serving in service projects, and our prayers are with all those facing these difficult things. I've been following Barbara O'Neill and would love to know what juicing I could have in the morning for diabetes. I'm trying to determine to get off the tablets. You know what I'd recommend to Fiona is the Barbara O'Neill health detox course. It's the LSR detox course. It's a 7-day detox course featuring Barbara O'Neill and other speakers, and they will walk you through some good, the juicing, the detox, all the things, including the disclaimer I'm going to ask Walt to make right now. Somebody with diabetes, do you give them a unique, I want to say formula, a recipe for their juicing, daily regular juicing? Are you looking not too much fruit on that one? Go with the vegetable.
Absolutely. We'll go with the vegetables. If they're diabetic, if we put any fruit in it, it'd be a Granny Smith apple.
Good. We grow those. They're good. Randy loves this. We're so glad to have you and all of you guys who are sharing, and I like that we can dialogue. You do Q&A. Jeremy, are we getting close to wrapping up, or do you have any more questions? Blessings to everyone from Exponential Potential. I like that optimistic name. Connecticut, welcome, Tina. Awesome. And Las Vegas, welcome, Karen. Glad to have you here as well. Cleveland, Ohio, our friend Melissa from earlier. Welcome again. And Casey, Norman, North Carolina. I hope that's not Western North Carolina. Man, those people are suffering.
They are.
Tasmania, Australia. Bridget, welcome from the opposite side of the globe. Can castor oil be used to treat bladder ulcers? Any concerns there from Nathan?
Absolutely, it can. And if you're looking at looking at ulcers, cayenne pepper can be used for causing the cauterization there. Also, I like slippery elm. I like marshmallow root. Those are great tools. Aloe vera. Those are great tools to also use.
Excellent, excellent. And gut issues too. Slippery
Oh,
elm and
absolutely.
yeah,
Yes.
yep. And aloe. Sunflower. Most doctors here in Australia don't know the cause of most issues, only how to mask it with medications. You're preaching Walt's message there, and I think Barbara would agree with you wholeheartedly on that. Oh, all right. Who's next? Jeremy? Frankie says just diagnosed with colorectal cancer. Frankie, our hearts are with you, and you're gonna make it through this. Walt, what do you say? Eh,
Absolutely. And
Let's go
again,
back to the previous one just for a second, if you wouldn't mind, Jeremy. I want to talk with this person with Walt for a moment.
you know, when you look at this, many times people will they they spend all, let's say, Frankie, and I don't know how old you are, but let's say that you're 75 years old. And so as we look at the time here, that we can possibly live, we may look at 10, 15 years. And people put all of their eggs into that 10, 15 years. But as we talked about earlier, we have an opportunity for eternity. And so look at putting eggs in both baskets. I think that's important. Yes, look at working, seeing what you can do on the colorectal cancer now, but don't forget what we talked about earlier, eternity and perfect healing. And that is amazing. If you have any questions on that, check with Scott's what he offered before. It is
Yeah.
amazing. And there's hope. There really is hope. From the standpoint of what you can do now, we talked about, I like juicing a lot. Um, and things to address colorectal cancer, as we just talked just a moment ago, the marshmallow root, the slippery elm, the licorice root, the aloe vera, all are great. You can also do some things rectally because that way the hydrochloric acid isn't breaking down. There's a very, very wise man, Dr. Kellogg, and he found that out, that many times the stomach acids will break things down, and he would use things like you can use the aloe vera as an enema, or some of the herbal teas as an enema. And we've done enemas for years. We used to. We don't see it as much now because it's kind of a messy thing. But those items I mentioned, the juicing, the exercise, things to build your immune system, and I think that's very important. The other is your mind. I find that, can I give you a simple recipe for the mind? Take a piece of paper, and on that piece of paper, because stress is huge, and Frankie, you need to look at stress right now, and write all your stressors down on a piece of paper, and then get another piece of paper and draw a T. On the top left, put controllables. On the right, put non-controllables, things that you can't control. And then on the left side, you're putting those things that you can, the right side you can't. And then take that piece of paper and carefully tear it in half. Set the ones down that you can control, put them there. And the non-controllable ones, sit down and have a talk with God and give them to Him. He loves you. He loves you more than you love your children or anyone else. And He wants to help you. Give those to Him. Now, don't take them back. A lot of people have OCD on grabbing those back, but give them to Him. And Satan's going to go, this is your problem. This is your problem. And I found this to be 100% guarantee, Frankie. It's amazing. When Satan does that, say, that's not mine. That's God's. Now go on. Go talk to Him. And then you say, in Jesus' name, Satan, get thee behind me. I don't care if you say it for 20 minutes, 30 minutes. He will stop bothering you. He cannot get through that. I've never found anyone that did that he could continue bothering. And just give those to God, because there's never a thing you can do. Then the ones you can do something about, take His hand and work with those. And I think that's very important.
Excellent. Fireman, doctor, preacher. Oh, that's excellent. Before we go to Angela, I'll just appreciate Angela here, thanking us for our time, praising the Lord Jesus Christ. And no matter what background anybody here is from, you look at the stories of Jesus and you're like, that's goodness and love personified right there. Ontario, Canada, welcome. And by the way, back on Frankie, Walt. Yeah, thanks, Jazzy. Um, on the dietary front, are you recommending going to that whole plant food for that colorectal cancer as well? Laying off the meat, dairy, eggs, oil, sugar, refined foods, going whole plant food for that?
I would definitely, and I'd even be more specific. I'd go and look at the the diet that Gershon used, where you're using the juices, 8 ounces every, for 12, 13 hours. You're getting 104 ounces of juice It's copious and it works very, very well. If you're looking for solid foods, the best thing I'd recommend is do this for 21 days. Take potatoes, carrots, celery, and onions. Potatoes, carrots, celery, and onions. Make a soup out of that. And you can have up to a quart each meal. But that there is amazing for going in and healing that colon and giving good phytochemicals to that colon.
Excellent. Any other questions, Jeremy? Jeremy's our engineer in the back end here, is whom I'm talking to, putting all your comments back up. You're welcome, Choco. God bless you and all of our listeners. Angela, we appreciate you. Thank you for that input. Switzerland is the same. Okay. The same as something else we were talking about earlier. Were you talking about the South? That part?
I don't know.
This has been a good interview. I think we're winding down because I'm not seeing any more questions pop up. Jeremy, you take us home if you want to take us home. Yep,
Here's
here
one.
we are. I could just tell. See you on our next live stream, everybody. Dr. Mark Sandoval. You know him, Walt?
No, I think.
He's a brother, isn't he? He's got New Paradigm Ministries. He's going to help you think about a lot of the mental battle. That thing about the paper tearing that, I liked that. He's going to talk about the law of life. What kind of thoughts and feelings and relational tips and tricks we can have to improve our physical, mental, relational, and spiritual health. That'll, of course, as always, be at 7 p.m. on Wednesday, 1 week from today. And Walt, I have really enjoyed this interview. I really enjoyed having you as a guest tonight. Thank you for the 1,000 factoids and tips that we got in under an hour and a half tonight. And thanks to our producer, Christian Digital Network. From likes to lives changed. Please scan that QR code. Subscribe to CDN on YouTube. And we'll see you all next time. I'm your host, Scott Ritzema with Living Springs Retreat. We'll see you next Wednesday. God bless you all.